Hello, Geo students. Realizing that this DTM activity can be a bit confusing, so I'm going to share with you a tutorial on how to get started on it. You'll notice in the directions after you download the DTM PDF to Notability, it also says there is a DTM graphic for you that'll help you out. I've taken a screenshot of that and pasted it in this assignment. I suggest you do that as well. So what I'm talking about is this graphic here. I also went into the notes from earlier in the week on population that had the demographic transition model, and I pasted that in as well because this is going to be helpful too. We're going to need both of these images to help us complete the assignment. It says in the directions in part 1, use your notes and DTM article, which is attached to the PDF of this activity, and use the graphic helper. So we're going to use those items here. In part 1, we're going to be asked to draw the birth rate, the death rate, and the natural increase rate lines for the demographic transition model for all 5 stages. Now, the graphic that I shared with you has all 5 stages in it. The graphic that I used in the notes only has 4. And that's fine. These are both models. They're both accurate in predicting the path that countries take with their population growth. They are slightly different, and I'll point out how they are different in that the birth rate and death rate lines are going to be very similar in how they run. See, those are the same. However, the graphic from my notes shows the natural increase rate and uses this scale over on the right-hand side to indicate the percentage of change in the natural increase rate. Whereas the graphic that I shared with you for this assignment that's going to help you out, they use the space between the birth rate and the death rate to represent the natural increase rate. So you can see where it's the fattest, right in between probably end of stage 2, moving into stage 3 is where it's the fattest. So that's where you have the greatest amount of increase of population growth. They don't use that separate line because they don't have that scale over on this side like the other graphic does. Instead, the line they have at the bottom is just showing what happens to the total population. So we don't want to draw in this line. We're not going to worry about that red one that is on that graphic. It can be a little confusing, but it's essentially telling us the same thing. It's just that they designed the graphs just a little bit by adding this scale over here on this one, and this one did not use that scale. All right, that said, let's draw our birth rate and death rate lines. So our birth rate is going to be green and our death rate is going to be red. Notice that the birth rate and the death rate are both around 40 in stage 1. And that's true when you look at this graph or when you look at this graph. They're both around 40. So let's go green. And that's fine just to do that. Then the death rate is red. Okay. Kind of looks like those. And the third part is the natural increase rate. And so that's when we take the crude birth rate and we subtract the death rate from it. Well, if they're both close to each other, then when you subtract one from the other, it should be pretty close to 0. So that's what we want to recreate. Close to 0. Okay. Oops. Try that again. Hit the wrong button. There we go. Now, if you want to move your graphs around, real easy to do. You use the scissor tool, tap on the image, and you can move it out of the way, which is something that I want to do to explain this next chart to you. When you do the descriptions of each stage, and obviously I'm going to ask you to do stages 2, 3, 4, and 5 for your graph. But as you do the descriptions of each stage, use the graphic that I shared with you. Okay. Also, there's a typo. think your version, your PDF of this says that the crude birth rate and crude death rate are low in stage 1. That's not true. They are both high. So make sure that you make that change. We made a typo when we put this together. For stages 2, 3, 4, and 5, what happens in each stage? Look at the graphic that I shared with you. Below the chart, we give what happens with the birth rate and the death rate and the natural increase rate here. So it's high, and then it's stable or slow in stage 1, right? So that's what we've got there. For stages 2 through 5, we'll want you to use what is in this box. When you get to the population pyramids part, you can skip stage 1 because there are no countries that are currently in stage 1. In your notes, I gave you population pyramids for countries in stages 2, 3, and 4. I gave you a pyramid for Cape Verde, a pyramid for Chile, and a pyramid for Denmark. So take a look at those slides, note the shape of the population pyramid, and recreate that shape in the boxes. There is no shape for stage 5 that I gave you in the notes, so I'm going to put that in here for you. So it would be an inverted pyramid, which just means the bars would look like this. Inverted means upside down. Okay, so that works fine for its shape. In part 2, you can go back in the notes. In the early part of the notes, I talked about some historical events that affected the world and pushed some countries through stage 2 and stage 3 and into stage 4. So look for those in the notes. And another place you can look to help you answer all these questions is to go to the reading. If my notes didn't make sense, refer to this reading because it essentially is saying the same information to you that I put in my notes. Lastly, for part 3, you're going to use the notes that I gave you. Again, look at Cape Verde, Chile, and Denmark, the DTM article, and the model that you created. And also use the link Nation Master to find a country that represents stages 2, 3, and 4. Note that we cut out stage 5, so that can be crossed out of the directions. Don't have to find a stage 5 country. So you could go Cape Verde here, you could go Chile here, and you could go Denmark here. But if for some reason you got something against any of those countries, another option is to look at the graphic that I share with you. There are some examples of countries that are in stages 2, 3, 4, and 5, so you could look those countries up. Or if you have a particular country that you are interested in, look it up in Nation Master, and you're going to look for the crude birth rate and the crude death rate for those countries and write them in. Now, you may find that, say you want to look up Nigeria, and you think it's a stage 4 country, and you find out that its crude birth rate is 30 and its crude death rate is 10, which means it's a range, it's a natural increase rate of about 20. So that means Nigeria is probably more likely to be in stage 3, just entering stage 3, or at the end of stage 2. The ranges that we've put in here to help guide you are just general guidelines. There's no fixed or set range that means a country is in stage 2 or a country is in stage 3. But in general, they should be fairly close to those ranges. If you have other questions, please let me know. Either message me in Schoology, or you can always pop into my Google Meet room and we can set up a separate question room because that's going to be your fastest way to get help. Or you can email me. Good luck. Thanks.